that God's time is not our time.
That's correct.
And if we get depressed because he's not answering our prayers when we want to, then some of that's just that maybe we hadn't dug down into the scriptures and, because the scriptures are clear about blessings and things. I see a lot of people that seem to get depressed because they feel like they've done the right thing and they've prayed and God still haven't answered their prayers. But the Bible is clear on that God's not a bubblegum machine. Just because we do the right thing, it tells us that it rains on the just and the unjust. Good rains on the just, good rains on the unjust. Bad rains on the just, and bad rains on the unjust. And sometimes see some people seem to be depressed because they feel like life or God's not treating them right. Spiritually, is that considered an attack of Satan?
That's one of those, when we look at depression and mental health issues from a spiritual point of view, that's where we get that very fine line. Because some people, like, and I know cultures that they believe it's an attack upon the person above the soul. They believe it's possession of the soul. And you can really have somebody who has a chemical imbalance. And they need that medicine. Or they may even just need to change something simple in their diet. So it's one of those things where we really have to rule out the medical first, and then we definitely believe in prayer. We want to pray on it, but we also have to rule out that medical and bringing that spiritual connection in. And we're going to talk about that later because that spiritual connection is very important because you have that support, and that support is going to rejuvenate you. It's going to give you that fellowship that you have to connect. I think there was one question in the back. Yes, ma'am. Human contact is so needed. Even when a child is born and they're in the ICU, you got to have that human contact because that helps that body, helps that individual feel connected. And that's the same thing as we get older. If we stay in isolation, like you just said, so many of those things could come into our minds. And it gives those unnatural spirits the ability to come into our mind and get us to thinking about stuff that we shouldn't be thinking about also. Yes, ma'am. Yes. And if you don't have people there to lift you up and help you get through that, you stay there. I have a friend that was suffering from cancer. She didn't even want anybody to know because she didn't want everybody coming by going, "Oh, I'm just so sorry for you." She's like, "No, I'm up. I'm upbeat. We don't want to be there. We don't want to be in that. Oh, I feel so sorry for you because that's not going to help anything." Okay. Why, 42:5? Why are you cast down on my soul, and why are you disquieted with me? Hope in God, I shall praise yet him, for help is his countenance. What he's saying here is, why are you coming down on me? And he's actually talking to himself. So that's where that conversation, that inward conversation is, woe is me. And he said, disquieted within me? Why are you yelling within my soul? Why am I having this rage inside? With prayer and understanding, he says, I should praise him for the help, for God is his help. Even in that moment, he realizes that God is his help. God is going to be his salvation. We have to remember that even in those darkest times, and going back to what Deacon Kelly was saying, even in those darkest times, we got to pray, and we got to pray a little bit harder. We got to hold on a little bit harder. And that's very hard to do sometimes. Yes, ma'am. I'm going to answer your question if you go to the next slide for me. And that's very important because we have to be able, and that's why, and I'm glad we're doing this, because we have to also be able to have people around us understand that and understand that this is something that we should not, we don't need to go like that. We have to be able to understand that this is something that is real. And I want to thank you for sharing, because not a lot of people are able to do that. You know, I talk about my depression, but I haven't sought help for it because of the stigma. Because in my community, the Afro-American community, Afro-American male community, as much as we talk about it in here, it's considered a sign of weakness. And people want it, oh man, I see on your medical record you taking medicine for depression. We struggle with that. I've tried, yes ma'am, I'll get you, just say it. I tried going into Latino Hispanic communities and just get them to try to talk about depression. They won't even let us in. Vietnamese community, they go get a shaman to form a spiritual ritual, which I don't have a problem with, but there's something else going on here that you also need help with also. Yes, ma'am.
I mean, it's just like depression. I mean, sometimes you go to family members, they make you feel worse than what you were. If you didn't do this, if you didn't do that, you would have did it this way, would have turned out that way. But they don't realize you have your own personality, and you have to learn through your own mistakes. The majority of the time, it's family members that will make you feel you're worse than what you are.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go back to what Deacon Kelly was talking about. That's when you got to dig down and pray. And sometimes you have to say, you know what, I love you, family, but I got. Yeah, I love you, family, but I need to be rooted. And we're gonna talk about it. I need to be rooted by people who are gonna help me, who understand me, and understand, yes, I need prayer, but they also need to make sure I'm making my appointments also. Yes, ma'am. And Brother Staley brought that up last week when we were talking about the youth. And actually, um, I was listening, I was doing some research on some of the notes that Dr. Howard had gave me, and that's one of the things that came up. What are we missing in our youth? Are our youth reaching out? And are we not hearing them, or are we not seeing it in them? And believe it or not, most mental health issues and depression issues go undiagnosed for 10 years. So that means if you have a person who's suffering from prolonged anxiety, it's been 10 years since it probably has even been recognized and diagnosed. And it could have been misdiagnosed. So yes, that can happen. I know of individuals who have gone that long. You know, I think about my issues. It started at a young age. And I remember my aunt telling my dad, there's something wrong with him. He's biting his fingernails all the time. That was at 10 years of age. Yeah. Yeah. Observation and being, and yes, and paying attention to individuals. Yes, ma'am. And we want to, and that's, and, and get them connected. And believe me, I love this conversation. And we're going to keep it on, but I'm going to do what Dr. Howard put on the notes. I'm going to try to get to his PowerPoint. So if you hit the next slide for me, please. In verse 3, he breaks down in tears and says, his tears have been food night and day. This is a symptom of depression. Either your appetite, you have one, and you stop it, or you eat all the time. Next slide, please. In verse 4, David says he went to the house of God with the multitude who kept the holy day. Next slide, please. Notice that David is saying, during my time of depression, I surrounded myself with people who kept the holy day. You got to surround yourself with people who are like-minded and in the Word, okay? Now, I teach a course, and it's very important how we look at this from a spiritual point of view, from a religious point of view. I understand the power of God. I understand the power of healing. Some people may not understand that. They may not believe in that. But you remember, you're that shining light. You're that beacon to that person. And you got to be out there showing them that, you know what? The good book, the word, whether it's on your phone, whether you're listening to it through tape, is going to help you. And you got to be connected. A lot of times I didn't feel good until I came to church. I didn't feel good until I got involved with Scouts. I came and did stuff with Scouts. That was it. It was being connected. And having those individuals around you who say and can help you understand. means a lot. Yes, sir. And then Ms. Wendy.
Notice what David is saying. He is saying during my time of depression, I surrounded myself with people who kept the holy days. You got to be connected with Christ. And it's not all the time you're going to be in a surrounding where godly people is going to be there to keep you stable. You got to fast and pray all the time because you easily can be misled or be kept away from your blessing.
Especially in today's society, thank you for that. Especially in today's society, you got to have that, whatever that nugget that you got to have to keep you going through the day, whether it's a scripture, whether it's a poem, or whether it's even one of the sermons on CD or DVD. You could listen to it, or you got to be connected. And that means a lot. It definitely means a lot because that connection is going to help pull you through. Ms. Wendy. No, we should, and that's very important. I can say personally, I know that just being in this congregation and seeing that ability to touch and be connected means a whole lot. And sometimes we have to check ourselves because a lot of times we do that question, you doing all right? You good? Blessing, highly favored, all right. We don't take time. We don't have the connections. And then there's some major connections that I'm very thankful in this, for that I have in this church. You know, a lot of people who have been, they may not know it, but they have really been great examples and great stewards and great leaders in helping me keep myself together and keep my family together also. Next slide, please. The best place to be when you're feeling depressed is to be with people who are thinking and praising God, you know. And even in the workplace, associate yourself with the right people. When I was working in Chapel Hill, one of my best friends was, she had, was a completed theology school. The other one was a marriage counselor, a minister in the church. We would get in our little huddles. They would get mad at me sometimes because I always say, well, my pastor said. But we would have those conversations and we would talk about the stuff that was bothering us and how we dealt with it. And it was very interesting, some of the things that we would talk about and how our different views, but no matter what happened, when we left there, I felt supported. they felt supported. And that's very important that we have that also. Next slide, please. What do you do when you are feeling depressed besides take your prescribed medication? How do you behave? What do you do when you're feeling depressed? Yes, ma'am. Okay. Be alone. So you take your time to yourself. All right. Okay. Now, she said being alone. Now, some people may say, oh, didn't we just talk about disassociation? Sometimes you might need to have that moment to be by yourself. And your loved ones have to understand that you need that moment. But they also need to understand, okay, there's a limit to that loneliness that they can let you be within. You have to understand that. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. You hug them? All right. A hug goes a long way. Being connected. Being connected.
Sometimes I just tell my husband I'm depressed. He like, what's going on? And then sometimes at that moment I don't like discussing it. I told him, give me a minute, let me just soak in it a little bit. I want to say the right thing or something. And he's very supportive.
And that's a good point in relationship when you could just come out and say it and say, I'm depressed. I need a moment. Give me time to get myself together, and can you help me after I get through this? You know, I'm sitting at the table with a family member. I'm in my 40s, and they go, oh, you know, we got mental health issues in the family. I'm like, you never talked about it before. Maybe this explains why I have a brother in Ohio that I don't know where he's at. He's living on the street. We got to share. We got to have this information out so we can help each other. Take your medicine as prescribed. How do you behave? If you're taking medication for depression, make sure you're seeing your doctor and let your doctor know how you're feeling. Any medication that you're taking, if you're not seeing your physician and letting them know what's happening to your body, is doing a disservice to yourself. I have a medicine that I'm on right now that has me I never thought I would be in this place. Anybody who drive one of those hybrid cars, you know how you get to the traffic light and it just goes boom. That's how my medicine has me. And I'm working with my doctor on it. So if your medicine and the medicines you're taking are having you feel that way, you need to let your doctor know so you can work on that. Yes, ma'am. It kind of goes back to what you said earlier. When we're looking at chemical imbalances and what's going on, they definitely should be doing some blood work to see what's going on. And a lot of it, and believe me, I'm not a physician. I don't have a degree in chemistry. So I'm telling you what I know from personal experience. You got to keep that balance. And also, your body sometimes rejects the medicine. There's a gentleman that we do a training with. He has suffered from major depression and anxiety. Well, they ended up having to take him off of all his medicine because it was killing him. But because they had to take him off of it so quickly, they also had to commit him because he became a threat to himself and he became a threat to his family. And then what they had to do was detox him and then start him on a new medicine. So yes, I understand what you're saying. It does maybe give you that cloudy sometimes, but they just can't stop you all of a sudden. And then also they need to make sure whatever they're starting you on is gonna be working also. I wish I could say you could titrate off of it and be off it altogether, but it's gonna be a lot based on behaviors and what you're going through at the time. Okay. Yes, sir.
If you're on medication, depending on how long you've been on it and how long that your prescription for, say, for instance, you get your prescription for that mind medicine for, you get about 24 tablets, and it say don't drive, don't take it while you're on the road. Some say, well, in order for me to keep up with the cars, I need to take it. Well, you know, you're either gonna be going too fast or you're gonna be going too slow. So behavior, if you see someone is in that kind of a stage, even on the highway, they got this, they got a certain behavior. If you don't have to know them, go to them and just say, look, it's gonna be all right. Let me try to help you get to where you need to go. I mean, some just let you get out there, hey, well, keep up with that tractor trailer. Don't you stop. That's a bad behavior.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Next slide, please. I'm trying to get there, guys. Notice in verse 5, after worshiping and rejoicing and praising with his fellow worshipers, David began to talk to himself. Next slide, please. Theologians and scholar Howard Thurman refers to this action as engaging in soliloquy. So this soliloquy is him having that serious conversation, and almost like a Romeo and Juliet moment where he's talking to himself. Next slide, please. So David is now talking to himself. He asks, "Why are you cast down, O my soul? Why are you disquieted in me?" Once again, why? Like an internal yelling, internal screaming. Why is this going on? Why you can't get yourself together, Tim? What's wrong with you, man? You know you wasn't raised like this. You go to church every Sunday. You pray. What's going on with you? Why are you going through this? Very important. Next slide, please. The Hebrew word for disquieted, pronounced hanma. The word means make a loud sound. It's a great common notion, rage, outcry, a roaring in one's soul. Not trying to generalize depression for everybody, but a lot of times that person is really yelling out internally and nobody can hear them. They're screaming, "I need help. Why can't you hear me? Why can't you see what's going on with me? Why can't you help me? Why can't you discover that I'm suffering? Did you not hear my prayers? Did you not hear my cry?" And that's where it comes to that point of that person may say, "I'm disconnected. I'm not praying anymore." I was reading an article today with this gentleman saying that he turned his back on the Lord. That's where that connectedness of people around us help us stay connected. And say, you know what? I know you feel like there's no hope at the end of that road, but you got to think about it. You could have been gone a long time ago, but because of his grace and mercy and the fact that you're getting help has got you to this point. Next slide, please. In Isaiah 59:11, Isaiah talks about the roaring of the soul, the roar like a bear, and mourn sore like a dove. And I had to look up what did it mean by mourn sore like a dove. So when I looked it up, it's like, you know how you hear the doves out there and go coo, coo, coo. And really, that could be a person. They could be raging at one moment and just as quiet as a dove the next moment. That little voice going in your head. That little voice going, "You in so much pain. What are you going to do about it?" And then the next moment, it could be yelling at you again. We look for judgment, but there is none. For salvation, but it's far from us. And this kind of goes back to what Wendy says. Sometimes you don't see where you are. You got to have people around you. you got to have people to help you. And so they could say, hey, you know what? Tim, I'm noticing some stuff. I'm noticing you're not doing what you're supposed to do, especially if they know that you have a diagnosis. So that person is going to help keep you connected. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Yes. And let me tell you, when you say you're going to pray for somebody, pray for them. Pray for them. So many times, like, I'm praying for you. Yes, ma'am.
As Christians, many of us that deal with depression have less tendency to come to another Christian. For it's already in our minds, we're already struggling with he say, she say, and who's talking, and what verse am I getting of how I'm being judged. And then we have our family, our church family. We don't want them to judge us because of the issues that are going on and how we're trying to control it. As Christians, we need to understand we're all different, and it affects each of us on a different level. My dark hole might not be your dark hole. I might be able to handle what you can, but when my depression hits and I'm down low, and my daughter comes like, no, we're not gonna do this, Mom. Come on, let's go get a soda. Let's talk this through. You have to have someone to know what the understanding and how to deal with you and deal with your feelings, so you can deal with your feelings.
You don't need judgmental Betty to be on your side at that time. You don't need that. You don't need that. And that's very important. Thank you for sharing that with us also. It's very important that we have to be open and understanding. And if that person shares with you, that's not something you need to be running out and put on Facebook, Twitter, and all that other stuff. That's somebody who's sharing with you that their soul is hurt. They are under attack. Now, if you don't understand that, you need to say, I don't understand, and get that person connected to somebody who does understand. Because you could do more damage than you know. Next slide, please. Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Is a disease, just like my blood pressure, my heart issue. Until we come to that realization, it's not going to get the attention that it needs because of the negative stigma that has been attached for so long.
Yes, ma'am.
Working in a high school, I saw youth going through depressions that one turned psychotic. I mean, it's just, you just don't know that the damage that can be done once somebody already has been diagnosed,
Yes.
if they don't have the proper
Help.
medical condition, medical help
Yeah.
with the situation. And I think we need to understand that there are, like, some people can reason themselves when they're in depression and know that they need help and can reach out. Some people cannot do that.
And-
They're so far in that hole that it's gonna take a whole lot to dig them out.
And that stigma, that goes back to that stigma and breaking that stigma. And that's why I say, I'm just happy and overjoyed that we're having this conversation. And there's not many churches that do it. And they will not let you have this conversation in the fellowship hall, in the sanctuary, or even in the parking lot. They ain't gonna talk about it. You just need prayer. Go on, see you later. Yes, Deacon. Deacon Winstead, that's another 8-hour course. But I'm going to tell you how you recognize. And I think a lot of you went through this when Deacon Kelly's sister Callie and I'm not for sure who trained with her did mental health first aid. And it talks about recognizing signs and symptoms. There's also one for youth. It's called Youth Mental Health First Aid. I've kind of talked about it with Pastor and some other people, and that's something that we may look at also. But it's really just noticing those drastic changes and paying attention to those loved ones. If I notice that you're not coming to church and you're staying home a lot, I'm going to say, Sister Winstead, is Deacon Winstead okay? Well, he's not feeling well. Okay, what's going on with him? He's just staying in bed. Okay, has he been to the doctor? No, he won't go to the doctor. Okay, then we need to go on and get the rest of the brothers to go on and have a conversation with you. So that's what we're looking at also. So David asked the question, why is this roaring, this outcry, this loud noise going in my soul? Then he encourages himself and says, hope in God. I will yet praise him for his help. Now this goes back to what Sister Kelly was saying. He recognized, he said, I got to have hope in God. Not everybody has that hope or can see that hope at that time. Just coming up here and doing this presentation, I didn't sleep last night. It's called training anxiety. Now, prolonged periods of training anxiety can lead to depression. I've been training for the last 2 weeks. I haven't had a good night's sleep. So, but that's how we have to recognize, and I need to recognize in myself that, you know what, I got to stop. I got to take a break. And I need my people who are around me to say, hey, you know what, Tim, you're not in a good place right now. And that's that community and getting rid of that stigma also. Next slide, please. Notice David says that this was the help of God's countenance. The Hebrew word for countenance is padneum. It means turns one face towards another. He turned towards his help. He turned to the face of his salvation. He turned to the place of, I need this healing. Okay? Next slide, please. David says, I will yet praise God because in the worship service, God turned his face toward me. In other words, God made his face to shine towards him and gave him the strength to go on. He recognized and he was able to go forward. Someone else may recognize and help you connect and be able to go forward. We're biological, psychological, social beings. We go through a lot of stuff. We got stress at home. We got stress at work. We got financial stress. We got the stress of the economy. We got the stress of the president. We got the stress of people shooting. There's a lot out there on us. And we got to have those people there to help us and get through this. But you got to be able to turn towards the Lord. Yes, ma'am.
What happens when you recognize you need help and you say, oh God, let me pray. I need prayer. And you just go to your closet and you're in there for however long it takes. But that release does not come. It's like you're waiting for a release button for your emotions to go. What happens then when you recognize you need God, but for some reason you can't accept him? Does that make sense?
I want to make sure I order my words correct. I won't say it's not you're not accepting him, because the fact that you went into that closet and prayed to him means that you understand his power. You may be at that point where you need somebody else to help you see. You may need somebody to help you walk through this. And how do you get to that point? If you have a therapist or someone that you're seeing, you connect to that therapist. Or if not, the provider for this area, the managed care organization that provides that, what we call crisis services, they have an 800 number, and it's called Sandhills. You could connect to them. They could get you somebody out. That's going to help you get connected. And once again, I don't want to say that you don't, there's always going to be that struggle. The devil's pulling at you. There's going to be things pulling at you. But you said the key word. You knew to go to him. You knew to go to his face. And then sometimes you're like, okay, well, if I go in here and pray, I want this to be over with. I can't tell you that's gonna happen all the time, but the fact that you went in that closet and prayed, now you need to say, okay, I went in that closet, prayed, all right, now I need somebody else to take me by the hand and get me to the services I need. Guys, I'm gonna go ahead and stop there. I know there's a lot of information on the sheet. Is there any other questions, any other information that I could share with you? Yes, ma'am.
I would like to say this right here. Through my life as a young person, I went through a whole lot of challenges. And I wasn't real strong in the Lord then, and I did as most people to try to help myself. But until we learn what God's word say, the battle is not ours, but it's the Lord's, and stay tapped in every time Satan brings that stuff to us, that we just immediately go to God in prayer and release him from our thoughts, because that's when we focus on what he's putting in our head, that's where our trouble comes in. If we focus on what God said, the problem solver and not the problem, I think we not much better. We may need the medicine too. I'm not telling nobody to take no medicine, but I'm saying if we just take it more to God in prayer and get us a prayer partner,
A prayer warrior.
and pray along with us to pray together, and between you and your prayer partner, whoever they are, and they have that confidence when so-and-so is praying with me, we praying together, and God, the battle is not ours, it's yours.
That's right.
We're gonna let you fight our battle.
And that is a great summation of what we're talking about. It is a battle. You got to know how to get on the battlefield and pray and ask for help. And then also, you need to understand and recognize where to go get that help. I understand when we talk about depression, mental health issues, we got a lot of stuff culturally we got to deal with. We got a lot of people who are afraid to talk about, I'm suffering, I'm dealing with stuff. And we got to do it. And we also have to make sure that our children are being able to express themselves also. So once again, this is the start of the conversation. And I'm glad so many people came back today for that conversation, because we're just at the top of the iceberg. We haven't even begun to deal with the stuff that, yes, sir.
I was just reminded, this morning my wife sang this song when she first woke up. What a friend we have in Jesus. And it takes me back to what the word of God says. God already knew the things that we were going to go through while we living in this life, even before we were even born. And I think, and that song says, take all our griefs to him to bear, you know. And so I'm just thinking that listening to this, that a lot of times some churches, as you said earlier, won't even consider talking about these situations. But it's happening in all churches. It's happening all across America for whatever reason or not, you know. When you was talking earlier about the guy talking about Ahmad, you know, that he was going around shouting and creating a great commotion, being noisy. I was looking at the guy down in El Paso, where he was doing the same kind of thing. But you know, this wasn't referring to the way that this guy was using, because he was killing people. He was shooting. He ain't thinking nothing about nobody but what's on his mind. But still, we got to take everything that God gave us in his word and put it into use the way our grandparents did years ago, if you will. We sort of walked away from God.
The world pulls at you hard. Pulls at you hard. If you guys would go ahead and come up and we circle prayer. And thank you so much for sharing all